Hello guys, welcome to Open Techno. Today on the channel, I'm going to show you the Kukirin G4, a high-end scooter that's not for beginners because it reaches 70 km per hour and has a range of up to 75 km. The electric motor on this thing is super powerful. It gives us incredible acceleration, so in my opinion, you should have some experience riding scooters so this one doesn't become dangerous. This is a high-end scooter in every sense, and I don't think it's made to be just a lightweight thing you take everywhere with you any way you want. No. This is a serious scooter that already has some weight to it. It weighs 35 kilograms, so it's quite heavy. If we want to put it in a car or take it out, we already have to do it with two people. It's not a scooter you can take up or down the stairs at work. And it also has a height of 1.4 meters, almost 1.4 meters. It's 1.3 meters long, and then the width. The base where we're going to put our feet is 21 centimeters wide and 51 centimeters long. It's quite spacious, so we can place our feet in any position without anything getting in the way, without having to put one foot in front of the other. We're going to have plenty of space, and by the way, I almost forgot there's a small step at the back for those of you who like to do wheelies and, well, show off a little in that sense. The construction of this scooter is especially robust. The scooter, so that it doesn't have any weak points or loose parts, basically comes almost fully assembled. So everything you're seeing from the handlebars down comes completely assembled. This whole structure is fixed. Here's the part where we can fold the handlebar, and it's very robust. We need to remove a couple of safety locks first. I'll show you more details later. And as you can see, everything is made of metal. This gives it a lot of sturdiness and makes it especially stable. We'll talk about high speeds later. Some highlights of its construction would be the suspension, both front and rear, which is super comfortable and soaks up bumps in the road very well. We can even go into some off-road areas, so to speak, with rocks or rougher terrain, because it's going to be quite comfortable to move around on these kinds of surfaces. I should mention that we have two cable-operated disc brakes, both on the front and the rear. We also have a bit of regenerative braking when we release the accelerator. And the braking is actually pretty good, because at low speeds, the scooter practically stops dead on dry surfaces, but it's really designed that way because since it reaches such high speeds, up to 70 kilometers per hour, it can achieve braking distances between 7 and 10 meters. So that's when you're going really fast. Like I said, when we're going at legal city speeds of 25 kilometers per hour, we can pretty much stop the scooter on a dime without any problem. As a distinguishing feature of this scooter, I should mention that the wheels are 11 inches in diameter and 9 centimeters or 90 millimeters wide. In this case, they're much wider than those of a regular scooter, the kind we've seen on the channel. It's surprisingly big. And above all, what this achieves is that we have a very stable scooter when we're going at high speed on straightaways. But also, keep in mind that when we want to turn at high speeds, we'll have to do it by leaning, just like you would on a motorcycle. But it's true that these wheels make it extremely stable at high speeds. The scooter has a front light that can be turned on and off both from the screen and from the power button. And then, with some turn signals so others can see our intentions to change direction. We'll also see them at the back later. Finally, about the construction, this scooter is especially high in the middle, which means that when we want to, for example, go up or down a regular curb, we can do it without scraping the bottom part of the scooter. We'd have to go over a pretty high curb for the bottom of the scooter to scrape, but like I said, it has good ground clearance here. And well, since I see that this little cap is open, I'll mention that this is the charging port. And even though I'm telling you that the scooter has a super sturdy build, the maximum weight the brand specifies is 120 kilograms for the person riding it. Now let's focus on the key part of this scooter, the motor, which ultimately moves us. In this case, we have a 2000 watt motor, which is way above the average for regular scooters you can find or see on the street. And it can reach peaks of up to 2,400 watts. What does this mean? Well, it translates into a top speed close to 70 kilometers per hour. We can reach those speeds at certain times when we have slightly favorable conditions. And above all, we have a very high torque, which means that if we start from a standstill with the weight a bit towards the back, we can even do a small wheelie. That's why I mentioned earlier that to handle this scooter, besides the fact that it reaches very high speeds, we need, so to speak, to have some experience. Because if not, if someone without experience gets on this and pushes it hard, it can become a somewhat dangerous vehicle. Well, I should also mention that this power will allow us to climb inclines of up to 30 degrees, but this scooter only has a rear motor. It's true that it's a bit less effective than scooters that also have a front motor, so they could beat us a little in acceleration when starting from a stop. However, if you like a sportier ride, if you like a bit more risk in that sense, having a motor in the rear is gonna make it much sportier, much more fun after all. However, this motor doesn't always have to deliver its full power. We can limit it from the screen, I'll tell you how in a moment, to 25 kilometers per hour. That way, the acceleration will be much lower and the top speed will be capped at those 25 kilometers per hour, which is, so to speak, the legal limit in Spain today. Also, I want to tell you that on the screen we have 3 driving modes: Eco, Sport, and Race, which correspond to 5 kilometers per hour, 15 kilometers per hour, and 25 kilometers per hour. In the same way, when it's unrestricted, it would become 20 kilometers per hour, 40 and 60. To power the motor, under this rubber that keeps our feet in place during acceleration, we will find a battery with 60 volt technology. Normally, scooters have 48 volts, but these 60 volts will give it more thrust, more torque for acceleration. Then, the capacity is 20 ampere hours, which translates into a range of 75 kilometers. However, this is what the brand promises us. If we use maximum power and maximum speed, the consumption will be much higher, and therefore the real range would be reduced to about 50 kilometers. But as I said, all of this will depend on your usage and the speed at which you want to ride the scooter. On the other hand, I should mention that the scooter will take about 11 hours to fully charge with the charger that comes in the box. And so to speak, the battery pack we have, will cost about 13 or 15 cents to charge at home, since the battery... And now that I've given you all this info about the Kukirin G4, well, how does it perform? How did I feel about it over the course of testing it? Well, you know, it's one of the scooters, if not the first, then the second, that has surprised me the most in terms of acceleration and braking. However, I do have to point out that this is by far the most stable one I've tried, because with others, when you're going at 30 kilometers per hour, the handlebar starts to vibrate and you have to hold it, not with force, but with firmness, so to speak. However, with this scooter, you can go at the maximum speed it allows at 70 kilometers per hour, and even if you try to loosen your grip, the scooter goes perfectly straight, smooth, without vibrating. Honestly, it's a super stable and very safe scooter for what a scooter is, of course, obviously. But as I mentioned before, we have really good brakes. The suspension works wonders on any type of terrain we ride on. It handles cobblestones, off-road, roads, of course. The tires make it very stable. I think for the price, this is the most stable scooter I've tried so far. So you can see the lights as well at the rear. We have this unit. From here, I'm going to turn on the lights. There you can see the lights are on, and when I brake, you'll see them blink. And we also have the turn signals here so that people behind us can see which way we're going to turn. Let's see how to turn on this scooter and its display. First, we have a set of 2 keys, which we insert into this side and turn to, so to speak, turn on the ignition. Now we simply turn on the scooter with this button, which we can also use to turn it off. And once it's on, we have a very simple screen where we can see the remaining battery and bars, the mode we're in, which in this case is Race, the most aggressive one. We currently have a total odometer reading of 12 kilometers and the speed displayed prominently. In this case, with these 3 touch buttons, we can turn the lights on or off. Activate the cruise control by holding the mode button or change the modes, which would basically be the maximum speed available to us. The modes are Eco, Sport, and Race. In this case, I haven't been able to do anything with the set button in the Spanish market, but in other markets, well, it does allow us to change some settings. When we turn on the blinkers, you'll see that a flashing orange icon appears in those corners. The same thing happens on the left side. And just to let you know, you can control all of this from the power button. We can tap it once to turn the lights on and off, or double tap it to change modes at any time. Then here we have an electronic throttle that doesn't actually accelerate or send power to the motor until we start moving. We have the front brake on the right and the rear brake on the left, the turn signals, and the horn. And now we just have to talk about who this scooter is for and who it's not for. Who is it for? Well, it's for someone who takes long trips at high speeds and wants to do it in a stable way. However, for someone who just wants to ride around the city, who for example wants to take it up to the office and has to carry it up 3 or 4 steps every day, or who wants to transport it in a car, well, it's true that I see it as a bit less suitable, especially because it's quite heavy, and that can make it a bit uncomfortable. But, as I said, everything that makes it heavy and sturdy also makes it stable at high speeds, which is something that many, if not almost all, scooters lack. Honestly, this scooter is starting to look more like an electric motorcycle made for the city, and finally, all that's left is to talk about its price. The price of this scooter on the official website is around 800 euros approximately. We've seen more expensive scooters on the channel that actually offered us less. Honestly, I think this is a good option. A very, very solid option if you want speed, you want braking, and you want comfort. Now, you should keep in mind that this scooter is not yet approved by the DGT. So in Spain, the regulations for 2027 will make this type of scooter illegal on the street. Keep that in mind. If you live outside Spain, other laws apply and you might be able to use it. I think it's a great option. That being said, guys, if you have any questions, leave them down below in the comments. If you found the video interesting and if you like this scooter, don't forget to leave a like, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.